tree. I'm just sitting here.
Go ahead.
Alright everybody, welcome back to the channel. We're at Parkway Brewery with Mike here. He's going to give us a rundown about how the brewery works. So introduce yourself, Mike, and let us know about yourself.
I'm Mike Pensinger. I'm the GM and brewmaster here at Parkway, and I guess I'm the guy that has to pay the paychecks and stuff. So along with make beer and do all the other stuff. So we're a great family-oriented company. We tend to take care of our own people and take care of the community, and that's kind of what our values are. So we make great beer and we sell great beer, and
that's
we
awesome.
give back as much as we possibly can.
That's what I was going to ask is, what made you want to start a beer company?
So I've only been here for 4 years. We've been open for 8. I'm a retired Navy chief.
Oh, thank you.
I retired in 2004. I started brewing professionally in 2002 in Virginia Beach, and I made my way through about 5 breweries until I came here. The original founders had sort of this wild hair. They wanted to open a brewery up, and one was working in a brewery, and he has friends that own Breckenridge, and they decided to get together and make this brewery. And they've both since left the company, but they, one still retains a little bit of ownership in it also. We just moving on.
All right, now what kind of beers do you do? Beer, ale, what all kind do you
So
sell?
beer's a big group, and in the term beer, we have ales and lagers and pilsners, and you name them all. Ale and lager are pretty much the 2 main categories. Lager beers ferment a little colder, have a little crisper finish. Ale beers ferment a little warmer and faster, and have a little more full-bodied finish. So if you hear an India Pale Ale, obviously ale, any of the mega beers that you get around, like Budweiser, Miller Coors, they're all lagers.
I didn't know that.
There's a new trend in craft where we're going to lagers. A lot of lagers we produce. We actually make one here too. So, you know, there are still people that want the lighter beer. I actually prefer the lighter beers, honestly. You know, our best seller is our India Pale Ale, Get Bent IPA. We sell a lot of it, 106 cases a day. Oh yeah.
That's
just
a lot.
It's a pittance to some of the bigger companies, but it's for us. We're like staggering.
That's impressive.
It's 100 cases a day, over a pallet a day.
That's impressive right there.
And that's just in Virginia, and we're distributed in 3 states right now. So.
What states do you distribute in?
So we're active in North Carolina, West Virginia, parts of West Virginia, and Virginia, and we're also authorized in Tennessee, but we're still trying to work some bugs out of getting into some stores now.
Look out, Tennessee people.
So
they're coming.
They can come over to Bristol and pick it up, though. Any of the grocery stores.
All right, well, let's go ahead and walk around and see what Mike can show us today.
Okay. Come this way, we'll start at the beginning of the process.
Oh, wow. Those things are huge. Those are huge, people. That is awesome. Those things are massive.
So, this is where everything starts. This is our main system. It makes 30 barrels of beer. So a barrel is 31 gallons. It's 2 kegs. So if you've done a keg stand before, you've been on top of a half barrel keg.
One time. One time I
So we make basically 60 kegs of each batch. Normally on a Wednesday, we run 4 batches back to back. We start at about 4 in the morning. We get done about 9:30 at night. And that makes 120 barrels, which fills up our big tanks that we get to. The magic all starts. So that big silo out there holds about 50,000 pounds of base malt. Malt with barley is the base of most all beer. You can add other things into it like corn or rice in some of the bigger breweries, different flavored malts, different colored malts, stuff like that in order to make different beers.
Now, do you get your malts as a local, or do you have to outsource?
Our main malt was actually made, grown in northwest Canada, Alberta area. It's one of the bigger companies called Roanoke Malting. They do a really good job. We have used some local Virginia malts in the past. One of our malt suppliers in Virginia just went out of business, and I understand it because I was real happy with what I did. There's another one, Murphy and Rude, that we haven't used yet, but I'm planning to start picking some stuff up.
Now, what is the difference between like hops and stuff? What is that?
So there are 4 basic parts of beer. There's water, there's malted barley or the grains, there's hops, and there's yeast. So the grains start as a big starch kernel, and we mash them, and we break all that starch down into sugars. Sugars get fermented to make alcohol. But the thing is, it's sweet, so you have to have something to offset that. So the hops add bitterness oils and stuff to the process. And that bitterness offsets the sweet, gives you balance in your beer. Now, if you have something like an IPA is balanced more towards the bitter side, or not even balanced towards bitter. Whereas something like Doppelbock, big Scottish ale is balanced.
Yeah, those are the dark beers,
yeah,
right?
Well, they're darker. They can be darker. A Bock beer is actually a very light colored beer, so it's very strong. But they're towards the malt side, so less hops, more sweetness.
That's impressive. I never even knew that.
So it's funny because a lot of people, they go, oh, well, it's dark beer, I don't like it, it's too heavy for me. But if you think about this, you've been to a good Irish bar lately?
No, I haven't, but I would like to.
You ever had a black and tan pour it?
Yes.
Okay, so if you think about a black and tan, it is a combination of tart lager and Guinness. And the Guinness is on top.
Never knew that.
So if you think about this, you have a very light colored beer on the bottom, right?
Yeah.
And a darker beer on the top. So the darker beer doesn't sink. It is actually a lighter beer physically than the lager.
So it kind of reminds me of like the water and oil type.
Exactly. Same thing.
Oh.
So it's all about densities of the beer. So you get this floating effect because you have different densities. It's kind of like putting blue curacao and cream and grenadine together in a shot glass. You get this red, white, blue shot, and it all stays a layer. But
That
each
is
one of
so
them have different
cool.
densities to them, so that's how they float. So it works the same way for the beers, and that's why I say, Guinness Stout is only 4.5% alcohol. It's actually relatively low, but it's a very full, rusty feel to it. So people go, oh, it's too thick for me. It's not really. It's thinner than the beer that you poured it on top of.
Now, how much alcohol content do you have in this beer?
We range anywhere from about 4% to 11.5.
Okay.
In the range of our beers. Our flagship beer is 7.2%. Our 4 mainstay beers go from 5.5% for the AAA Amber, 5.6 for the Kolsch, and 6.1 for the Porter, 7.1 for the Porter, 7.65.
Now, what's it like working in a beer personally?
Me, I love it. I mentioned I was a retired Navy. I worked in the Network Operations Center for the plane fleet for the last 4 years. I went into a building with 4 foot of concrete walls and the windows in the morning to start. 11 in the evening to start.
Oh,
So
yeah.
now I get to do this for, I don't make anywhere near as much money.
But to look at what you're making.
Yeah,
That's
oh yeah.
the joy of it.
For me, I could spend all the time in the knot and I could fix 3 or 4 different shifts worth of stuff and get all this stuff fixed up. And you really never solve it.
Yeah.
Here, you make a beer, I understand the tap room, and somebody goes up and says, this beer is right. And it's like, it's instant feedback. So the feedback is really nice.
That's so cool. That's
And we
awesome.
have, like I said, we have a very unusual group of people that work here. So we try to treat everybody like family. And
That's what you should do.
I feel like we actually have a special relationship here because not that kind of special, but special relationship anyway. But of 5 of us, we drive 600 miles each day to come to work here.
That's impressive. Man. That shows the commitment that you guys have for the company and for what you
And
do.
the environment for it. July and August, worst times to work in a brewery because there's no air conditioning here.
Big old warehouse.
So there's no air conditioning and there's big vats full of boiling water, which makes it just a steam fest. So you want to go see them?
Let's
Okay,
go.
let's go see them.
Go with it.
Where it gets ground. So it's barley. It looks like a little kernel husk. It's a husk on the outside and chunk inside. Grain mill rips the husk off and breaks up the starch inside, and it all comes into here and mixes with hot water. And inside right inside the husk of the barley, there's enzymes, and the enzymes break down all that starch into sugars. It's the same way your mouth works. It's the same way it creates. If that seed were to actually grow, it would do the same thing. It would break it down, make it into sugars that are digestible by the plant, and the plant would grow.
That's so
So
impressive.
what they do is maltsters will create that growth spurt to make that starch kernel, and then they'll stop it. Then we get it. Then we crush it up. Yeah. So it gets mashed in here, and when it's mashing, it looks like porridge, basically.
Okay, kind of like how oatmeal.
Yeah, yeah.
Get
So,
that.
but it doesn't get quite as sticky because we try to, when we break the kernel up, we try to keep the husks whole as possible because they don't dissolve or ferment. And what they do is make a really great filter material. So it comes back over and it goes into this side. This side. There's a bottom that has a grid. So it's a little false bottom. So all that stuff goes in there, and the liquid and all the sugars that we've created will go through the grid, and the husks will filter out any other chunks of things that we don't want.
Oh wow.
So then that will go over into the boil kettle over there. Goes in them, and we all know that oil and water mixes, right?
Yes.
Only in beer.
Good.
I didn't know that.
So we were just talking about it. Our oil sits on top of the water.
Where it separates.
You have to get it to emulsify, so when you're cooking, you have to.
Oh, sorry.
If you were cooking, you have to put something like an egg white in it, something that makes it emulsify to get it together, so your dressing doesn't break.
Yeah.
So in our case, we add heat and sugar, and then the hops. Some of the oils will dissolve in, and that's what gives us three things. It gives us bitterness, it gives us flavor, and it gives us aroma. So the first hops we put into the thing actually give us the bitterness. It boils for so long that all the things that make flavor and aroma boil off. But then there's the next part, the middle hops. They're in long enough that it boils off the aromas, but the flavor is still there. It still has a little more bitterness. And the very last thing you put into it, you can smell that stuff. But it's only there for a short amount of time. Less bitterness gets created, but more aroma and less flavor. And after it all gets done in there, and Peter here is finished with it, it goes over into that vessel over there where it spins around, and all the hard stuff, all the vegetative matter, the hops and everything that we put into it, plus some coagulated proteins and stuff like that will settle in the middle, and then we'll suck it off and we'll chill it. And we'll go downstairs and watch it. Look at that.
Nice.
When it comes out of the boil kettle, it's at 212 degrees. Plus it's sticky. So it like sticks to you. It's a really bad thing to get it on you. And it goes into the whirlpool where all the stuff settles out. And we pump it out of the whirlpool through this little thing right here. This thing is efficient enough that it can take cold water from the tank behind us over here to chill that from 212 degrees to 68 degrees.
Oh wow.
As fast as we can pump it.
That is impressive.
Because at this particular point is when we're going to add yeast into it. The yeast is going to eat the sugars, but yeast doesn't like anything over about 100 degrees.
That's true, because that's true when you make bread. You have to have it at a certain
So
temperature.
you proof yeast at like 105 just to get it going, and then
Get it activated.
So, but it wants to be warm. In our case, our yeasts are real specialized, so at different temperatures they can produce different flavors too. Have you ever had a Hefeweizen before?
No, I haven't.
Wheat beer, foggy wheat beer.
I may have.
Okay, so they have banana and clove overtones. So if you ferment them a little bit hotter, like 72 degrees, it makes more clove.
Okay.
And if you ferment it at 68 degrees, it makes more banana. So every one of these Hefeweizens is a little bit different adjustment of both the malts that go in them and the ferment temperature in order to create a profile that's unique to that particular brew.
That is awesome.
So once it gets chilled, it comes out, we inject some yeast into it. It follows these little hoses. And it goes into a fermenter. So we have, Parkway, we have two 30-barrel fermenters, so one run through the brew pot. We have four 60-barrel fermenters, so two run through the brew pot. And then 320 barrels of spoils. So next week we'll run, on Tuesday we'll run a single batch, a double batch, and then Wednesday we'll run a four-way batch. So this particular beer is a 60-barrel batch. It started on Tuesday. It's our sour blueberry ale. It's called a kettle sour, so when we brew it, we do all that stuff, we boil it for a really short time, and then we chill it down to about 100 degrees, and we put an in-house prepared lactobacillus culture. So lactobacillus, everybody goes, oh, lactobacillus, but if you eat yogurt, you eat at least 5 different versions of it.
Oh.
So what makes it sour. So
Okay.
it's how you make yogurt anyway. So we use this stuff. When we bring our pH from 5.5, which is relatively acidic, down to 3.3 in 2 days.
That's
And
impressive.
we created this starter in-house because our grains actually have lactobacillus in them.
Yeah.
So we used our own grains to grow a starter of this lactobacillus. And then every time we make this beer, we siphon off a couple kegs so we can make the next batch of it. So you can keep a sour going all the time. Plus, it's much stronger than buying a culture from someplace, and it's a lot cheaper
True.
too.
Yeah. Doing your own is a
So
lot
when it
better.
goes into here, fermenters have these cone bottoms. They don't always have to have cone bottoms. There are a lot of places that have flat bottom fermenters themselves. But the cone is something that they figured out that the yeast is 60 degrees. The yeast with double-digit jobs like to roll down the hill and settle in the bottom.
Pretty much like sediment.
Yeah, so it's sediments at the bottom.
Same concept.
We actually, depending on the beer, like this beer, the yeast we use in this will be the last time it gets used.
Oh.
But if we are doing something like our Kolsch beer that's in that tank or our IPAs, we pull yeast off of it so that we can move it into the next batch. So
Okay.
we just started new batches. So the yeast going into this is generation 1, and it would be considered generation 2 when it's in here. So we run 6 to 9 generations depending on the yeast, and then we'll start a new batch. We'll start with our cold beer. We'll put a whole bunch of grain into it, and harvest that off, and then we get into our IPA. So we reuse the yeast over and over and over and over and over.
That's what
Kind of like a starter
dough.
dough, a sourdough starter, same sort of idea.
Okay. All right. What's next?
So, once it's fermented, and all the things that does go during ferment need to happen, in that particular case, we're going to put 1,700 pounds of blueberries in it.
Oh, I love blueberries.
Mix them all up, let them do their thing, and then we'll put some other stuff in it that lets it settle out. All of the things we use are vegan, if anybody cares. Some people do, so just for only thing about that one we use some lactose in it. So we do have a few beers that have some lactose in it.
Okay.
But any of our normal beers, they're all vegetarian, vegan friendly. Everybody
That
can
is
eat it.
awesome.
Drink
Yep.
it. Maybe
'Cause
the
that's what's
oyster
going
stout.
on now.
Probably not the oyster stout, but we'll figure
Okay.
it out. I haven't come up with a plant-based oyster quite yet. But, so at that point, it's relatively clear, but we want to make it really super clear. Most beers. So we run it through this cool machine. This machine is a centrifuge. So we're an unusual brewery because of our size. There are very few people that have centrifuges. Normally, the much bigger breweries have these.
Okay.
We did 7,000 barrels last year.
Oh, wow.
Devil's Backbone did 68,000 barrels. They have centrifuge. We have one also. Ours doesn't quite work as well as theirs does, but this thing will, basically we measure what the carbonation, the residual carbonation in the beer is,
Yeah.
and then we know what our target is, and we dial in what carbonation level we want and add in the extra amount, and it spins it at 19 Gs. All the particles and the yeast and everything comes out of it, gets dropped out of it.
So it's separate. So it's what it's doing is
Yeah.
separating.
It does, it separates. So it spins around so fast that the hard, big stuff goes out, and then the beer comes in the middle of it. But it also puts a specific volume of CO2 into it. Normally what we would do is we would put a little air stone in the tank.
Yeah.
It would take about 16 hours to carbonate the beer. So we use Boyle's Law, partial pressure, gas pressure, a certain amount of pressure at the top.
Yeah.
Needs equal inside of it. We put CO2 in really tiny small bubbles and it dissolves into the beer. That's how the carbonation gets there.
That way you can
In
put
this
it in
case,
the bottle.
yeah, in this case, we can literally inject it as it's going. So one of these batches used to take about 4 hours to move over and then 17 hours to carbonate. Now we can move the whole thing and decarbonated, ready to go in 4 hours flat.
That makes it a
So
lot simpler.
the savings in time makes a huge difference. Plus, the efficiency of carbonating in a tank is only maybe 60 or 70%. You end up blowing off a bunch of CO2.
Yeah.
In this case, it's 100% efficient for carbonation, so we don't use any excess CO2, which means we're not putting any excess CO2 back in the environment.
That's pretty good. That's actually pretty awesome.
So,
That's impressive to look at.
yeah.
It looks complicated.
It should
but-
be. It was $160,000. So,
Ooh, goodness.
so, this is a very cool machine. We like it a whole bunch. We use it for lots of different things. clarification is the most important thing. One of the other things we do is we have a cart that we use to clean all of our tanks. It uses chemicals. And as the chemicals get used, they don't necessarily get weaker, but they get dirtier. So every time we clean this, we use that cart to clean it. And it actually centrifuges the dirt out of the chemicals so that we can make our chemicals last longer also.
Alright, that's why I got gum that way too.
Yeah.
That way I want to too.
So once it goes through the centrifuge, it goes into one of these tanks over here. Yeah. Right here that's ready to package. So it typically is super clear and bright, so hence the name. 30 barrel, 60 barrel, 120 barrel tanks.
And where do y'all go to, I guess, put them in the bottles and stuff? Do y'all do that in-house?
Right there.
Oh, snap.
So we package in 3 different forms. We package in bottles, cans, and kegs. So this little machine here is our keg machine. We own all of our own kegs, or we lease some of them. So we basically hook that up to it. It cleans the kegs for us, then we set them down and we fill the kegs with it. Canning, we actually have a company that comes in and cans for us.
Okay.
So they bring all their whole system into it and they put it up against the side of here. We put the cans out of the regular market. Bottles, we do everything in-house.
Now, what is it like a certain colored bottle that's good for beer and ale?
Brown.
Brown?
If you get a completely black bottle, it'd be perfect.
Oh, wow.
So, it's a great question actually. So the fact is that what makes a beer go skunky or light struck is sunlight, and very specifically blue light.
So what's the difference between all of that?
So the oils in the hops, basically what skunky beer is the oils went rancid. So like, if you ever, it sounds dumb, but if you ever left like vegetable oil out for a long time and it gets sort of stinky, same idea, okay? So the sunlight really activates some of these oils really easily. So a clear bottle lets everything through.
Yeah.
A brown bottle actually filters out the blue light spectrum.
I had no idea.
See those blue blocker sunglasses?
Yeah.
They're all brown.
Oh.
So
I remember
there have
that.
been some beers that I've seen in the past put in a blue bottle, which very specifically only lets the blue light through. So I really don't understand the concept of that at all. But I think it had to do with a college that it was named after, and their colors were blue and white, and they were in Pennsylvania. So we use brown bottles. So the bottles go onto here. We're that type of place. We built our own depalletizer. So we get the bottles coming on pallets with 2,250 bottles on it. We jack them up and we push them in. Yes, this really is parts of an old.
I was just saying that looks
It's a
old.
ground store.
Really?
Yeah, that we repurposed into a.
Hey,
suite.
whatever works.
So we push a button, and a little sweep back there pushes all the bottles onto the conveyor. Conveyor takes the bottle. Bottle goes around the corner. Bottle comes up to here. As long as that side of it's not full, it puts a label on it. So the bottle comes through here, it spits a label on it, it presses the label on. That little machine dates our bottle.
Okay.
Puts the date it was bottled in the time, so we can track it. Comes off of here, goes into this machine. So this machine is a rinser, a filler, and a capper, a post rinser.
Wow.
That's,
So-
I would have never. How fast does it? I mean, how many can you get, like, per day when they're filling them up?
700 to 800 cases. So this machine is designed to run at a maximum speed of 66 bottles a minute.
Wow.
We
That's
typically
impressive.
run it at 50 to 55.
Yeah.
No machine is ever built to consistently run at their full speed.
Yeah.
They're kind of designed to be at like 70%, so we're a little above that. I think this company, we're one of their larger breweries that has it. They also have a machine like this in a kombucha factory somewhere that has about 12 million bottles through it. We have 3 million through ours right now.
That's impressive.
And that's in 2.5 years.
That is
So
so
basically,
cool.
the bottle comes in, it gets picked up by a little clamp thing, it gets flipped over and rinsed out
Yeah.
and drained, and it comes back down, it goes in, it goes around. As long as there's a bottle on a little platform, it'll push the valve up. It vacuums the bottle out, get the oxygen out of it,
Yeah.
and then it equalizes it, and it opens the valve, and it fills by gravity around it.
Oh
And
my
it comes
God.
around and it lets the pressure off, it comes down. We sprayed a little bit of foam off the top, and then
Let me know when you're ready.
okay.
All right. Next thing is eggs.
Casks.
Cast. Thank you for correcting me.
Well, barrels, technically.
Okay.
So these barrels represent a number of things. Some of them are experimental sour beers that we're making.
Okay.
Some of them are just beers aged in white wine barrels or red wine barrels. There are some bourbon barrels that have sour beers on them also. They're, I don't know what the best way to say, they're painful because they take so long. You really have no idea whether they're going to come out. Like, we have some in some bourbon barrels that went for 2 years. They just didn't really do anything. And then suddenly they were this beautiful sour brown ale. And we're really super happy with it.
Yeah.
And then we've had some of these others for 2 to 3 years and they're just not sour. So,
Is it just the wood?
no, I think it's a combination of the beer and what we put in them.
Yeah.
And, you know, sour beers are like kind of the rage these days. And, a lot of people don't realize that it takes years to make these things sour and get them going. Unless you have a thing called a fruiter, which is like a super huge barrel and you actually ferment it right in there all together.
Okay.
You can control that a lot better than you can with little barrels. So they're kind of an experiment for us. We've done some beers that are just straight up bourbon barrel aged, and we had really good luck with that. We do our IPA, we do an oak aged version of it. It actually doesn't have a touch of barrel. It has wood chips that we circulate it through. It's been aged on wood, and it has a very distinct oak flavor to it.
Oh, see, I bet that would taste
So
really good.
it's a lot of fun. We've come up with alternative ways to do the oaky versus a barrel because we don't really want the bourbon in the IPA. We
Yeah, 'cause
just
it's
want the
gonna
wood
mix.
part of it. So you know, traditionally, there's some thought pattern that IPAs originally had oak flavor to it because it was created to make it all the way to India and had to go around the Horn of Africa, and they were carried in oak barrels. Since then, it turns out that they line that barrel with pitch, so there'd be no oak flavor to it.
Oh, so is it like
it's
a
not actually
coating?
traditional, yeah, it's just a coating so that it waterproofs the barrel.
That's not fun.
Yeah, well, but we don't do that. But
Yeah.
you know, like I said, we use bourbon barrels on a pretty regular basis. We put some of Raven's roots porter we've done in bourbon barrels. It's been fantastic. We have done a bourbon barrel IPA. It's not my favorite thing in the world. Some people like it, but I think there's also the group of people that are like, "Oh, it's bourbon barrel. It must be great." I can tell that's Woodford Reserve.
Exactly,
No,
yeah.
it's not.
Totally different.
Tend to get our bourbon barrels from Sweet Ambler, West Virginia, and Lewisburg, West Virginia.
Okay.
They've been around for a little while, and they've been using another brewery's barrels, and then we just recently been getting their personal barrels from their in-house production. And then the wine barrels, we have a place in Pennsylvania that specializes in wine barrels. A lot of wineries use them once or twice, and then they don't use them again because they're looking for the oak out of them also.
Oh.
For us, we're looking for the wood vessel, and honestly, in some cases, we're looking for the wine taste out of them. We did our porter in red wine barrels, and it's fantastic.
I bet that would be awesome. Yeah, there's different woods, like the oak and all that, make, I guess, beer and whiskey tastes different from
I believe
wood.
so, yes. So very specifically, like if you're looking at bourbon has to be American oak. No question about it. Once used American oak, chardonnays. That's the rule of bourbon. But then most of those bourbon barrels go and they put Scotch in them. Like, most bourbon barrels end up in Scotland and put Scotch in them.
We don't like to go there one day.
Different kinds of wood in a wine makes a difference because the flavor's a little lighter. I think you get lost between Hungarian oak and American oak and French oak.
Yeah.
Beer
I was
because
gonna say.
you get the oak, but you may not get quite the same flavor. Now some people might. I don't have that kind of a palate that I can tell the difference between a beer that was aged in Hungarian, French, or American oak. French and Hungarian oak are a little bit lighter. French oak specifically, American oak is a little bit more forward. So a lot of what you get out of oak is vanilla.
Yeah.
So the wood flavor is all made up of vanilla. It's kind of the same way as like the vanilla bean almost, but a lot subtler.
Very cool. All right. Now you do have a place where like the public can come in
Sure.
and
Come on, we'll go look.
I noticed that when we came in.
So what you're seeing in now originally was office space, and where I showed you the cooler where the original wall was, that was all the tap room before. So in 2015, or 5 years ago this year, we changed all this into the tap room and then blew this wall out and added all of that space, plus the parking lot on the other side.
That's pretty awesome. And I see you sell shirts.
Yep, we do a full
and
merchandise
sweatshirts.
line. We sell all of our beers both to go and for in-house consumption. You know, during the situation right now, we have some very specific rules about coming in, but we are open, and as long as you're sitting at a table, you don't have to have a mask on, but as soon as you step up from the table, you put a mask
put
on.
it
So
on,
we absolutely are enforcing that here. And if you don't want to do it, then I'm sorry, you just can't come in. Outside, no masks required, but we socially distance all of our tables. Really despise the word socially distance.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I think it's going to be bad for us humanitarianly for a long time. But if it fixes what everybody needs to get fixed, then so be it.
True. Gotta go with what everybody has to do.
But one of the big things we do is what we're really known for at Parkway is our music. When we started in 2012, or end of 2012, beginning of 2013, we started putting local bands on stage. And a lot of the big bands around here that you see, Goat and Mad Iguanas and stuff like that, they all started here.
That is totally awesome.
We were the first ones to really give them a shot to come on a regular basis. They've done really well for themselves, and they're great friends of ours, and we keep having them back.
Promote them, and they promote you.
You know, as it is right now, we are limited to singles and duos right now. We had one on Sunday, we had House of Schmidt on Sunday, and it was a test because they're really popular, and we worry about people packing in, but apparently it worked pretty well. So we'll see how it all works as we roll through this opening back up with things.
All right. Well, to finish the video off here, what website? What's your website?
www.parkwaybrewing.com.
Do you have an Instagram? Any other social
at
media?
parkwaybrew.com.
Okay.
There's a Twitter account, but I don't think any of us really care about Twitter. So
Well, I like the larger cities or that kind of stuff. So, all right, guys. Well, thank you so much, Mike, for allowing us to come into the brewery today to
course,
visit with you
absolutely.
and see what it's all about. Appreciate it.
no problem.
All right.
It's clear to see from up here. The world seems small. We can sit together.